when it came to Dracula, and it's one of those stories that gets repeated and remade all the time because it's classic, and the obvious challenge would be, well, what can you bring to it, and how do you approach it? And you could pick different characters to tell the story through, and that sort of thing. But something I always thought would be an interesting thing to look at was Dracula's journey from his home to England. You know, on that boat, and then as the boat arrives, and oh my God, what happened? You know, everyone's dead. And boy, there's a whole story there. You know, it's almost well, not quite a prequel to the story, but it's certainly an event, and you know what happened. I mean, it tells you. But still, it seemed like there was possibilities there to explore a story in and of itself. And there is, but was it worth the effort? And that's something that, even though I thought it would be a good idea, I myself really couldn't think of anything that makes it worthwhile. But I wasn't the only one thinking it. Someone else did, and so they made the film The Last Voyage of the Demeter. No, that's not a device that turns your meat-filled meal into a vegan meal by taking all the meat out of it. Wow, that's one of the Greek goddesses, I believe. But anyway, that's the name of the ship that Dracula had made arrangements to transport his coffin with him in it, and his native earth, in it, which was part of the deal. He had to have that. Otherwise, he couldn't cross the sea. The different vampire rules and all that sort of thing. And of course, well, when the ship arrived, like I said, the crew's dead and everybody, except Renfield. Well, Renfield's not in this one. I've never read the actual book. There's different, so I don't know if that he traveled there separately or if that was, I forget. But anyway, in this version of the story, that it's all those arrangements have already happened. You've got a bunch of guys looking to get on the ship for work, and then you have our hero character, who's looking to get passage on there, and he just doesn't have the money for it, so he tries to get on as a member of the crew, and they're, well, they've cast a black man for that role in this, and so immediately you say, well, look, that's the representation token and whatnot. Yes, you could have a black crewman on this ship at the time. That's not all that far-fetched. They add on to it that he's actually a doctor, but he wasn't accepted by the profession because he's black and that sort of thing. And that comes more of the detail later. Okay, yes, a scenario like that could have played out. But anyway, he gets on there, and for the most part, it doesn't really matter. But later on, when the horror starts and they're all panicked and they don't really understand what's going on and everything, there's a moment where he gives the lecture. There's also a woman who mysteriously shows up. Turns out she was brought along for Dracula's feeding purposes. But the good doctor is able to administer a blood transfusion to her, and this revives her. Later on, you discover this only temporarily stalled the progression of vampirism in her case. But anyway, even though this is a story, everything is going to happen, and its power is in the performances, but for the most part are pretty good. There's some elements that's like, I don't think they would do that. Makes like the lecture and stuff. I just don't think it would come up in the midst of that after the horror they've seen. There is a scenario where they're distrustful of him and they suspect perhaps he's the killer, even though that would seem a little far-fetched. But if they did, it probably would have just done him in, But anyway, that's not what happens. I guess the closest thing to it, and I've seen it mentioned elsewhere, that this is reminiscent of the scenario of Alien. You know, you're trapped on a ship with a monster, and that's basically what happens here. So just that feeling of you're trapped in a ship. You know you're on it, but now there's a monster on there, and these things keep happening right off the bat. Dracula wipes out the livestock they have on board the ship, and then he starts picking off the crewmen, and they realize, well, what's this about? And other people get a glimpse of him and that sort of thing, and it's all dark and you don't quite see him. You never really get a full-on look at him. Here and there at the climactic end you sort of do, but of course it's always at night and everything. But that doesn't bother me that much, and I'm sure it saved on the cost. The look of it in atmospherics is spot on, very good. And I imagine the money really went into the ship and all that for that set. And they do very well at that, and the cast is fine. But the scenario, how believable is it? And that's the problem for the story. It's a 2-week journey, I believe, and by the time he's attacking and everything, he would have had to have wiped them out fairly quickly. Here, well, he takes off a few, and then he goes back to his coffin. And they don't know it's a coffin; it's a crate, and and then that's believable in the sense that they wouldn't immediately, he's in there, they can get him. It wouldn't have occurred to them. Plus, it takes them a while. They still, even till the end, they don't fully understand vampirism and why this happens and this sort of thing. So they really wouldn't know how to fight him until it became pretty apparent that the sun is their best weapon. But it would have been easy to take him out. There's not a whole lot of space there to find him eventually. And they could have dragged him out while he's asleep into the light and burn him. There's a guy who's turned into a vampire. They don't understand the burning, but he attacks the captain's grandson on there, and they're like, what's this all about? And that he's sick, and that they think there's some sort of rabies on board or something like that, and they just don't know. And the guy erupts into flames on the deck, because he's in the sunlight, and they're like, holy crap, well, this isn't normal. And there's things like that. So there was a means by which, if you could get Dracula into the sunlight, you got him. And I think they could have done it. The way it's handled, and that they can't find him, and they do find the crate at one point, and I guess he hides elsewhere, but it's just, come on. And it is dark down there, so he could survive even in the daytime, but eventually you'd catch up with it. There's certain elements that he's a little weak as he starts, as he's getting the blood and everything, but as he gets more blood, he's got more powers and all that. But ultimately, you know how it ends. They're all wiped out and everything. Except our new characters, the good doctor and the girl. They managed to escape on some debris. And, of course, they failed to kill Dracula because we know where the story's going. He was not going to die at the end of at least this part of it. And they're out at sea, but they can still make it back to shore, except, she starts to turn again. And he's like, wait a minute, I saved you. And she said, no, it was only temporary. You delayed it. And then she doesn't want to be a vampire anyway, so she gives herself up to the sun and burns away. My guess is because his treatments did work on her, that that kept her more in control of herself. But that's speculation, basically, But anyway, that's the sad ending. So he survives. He makes it back to London, and he's looking for Dracula, and actually does run into him, but he's in full control of his powers, and he can't. But he's like, I'm going to hunt the beast down, and it ends like that. Well, of course, you know the story. he doesn't hunt him down. Van Helsing is ultimately the one who takes him down, you know, and after he pursues Mina Harker and all that. That's that. But so how else to approach it? I don't know. It's interesting. I can see that this wasn't going to catch enough of people's fancy, other than just, oh yeah, there's that whole story you don't get a whole lot of detail about. And the atmospherics and performances are great, and there's, you know, tormented scenes and sadness here and there, and that sort of thing. And they all do a good job of it, but it's just not enough there to draw you in, and it flopped. You know, I mean, it's it's not gonna do much beyond this, but other than the curiosity of the possibilities of that, which maybe a better writer could come up with a twist here and there that would be better than this, but that's about it. It looks good, it's performed well, but it's ultimately rather pointless, and that's unfortunate. But I don't regret watching it, so I guess that's the best I can put on that. I don't think it's a bad movie. Even though I think I was intrigued by the concept, I don't think it paid off.